Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage President and COO of New Relic, Chris Cook.
I got to say, pretty impressive room for this time of the morning. Anybody have fun last night at the party? I just got to know, it's a little survey I want to do. Did the mimosas and Bloody Marys help get you here this morning? All right. So we'll keep doing that. That's going to be a tradition for every FutureStack. All right. And Bill Kaiser, are you in the room? Where is he? Uh-oh. All right. No, that's all right. Anyway, Bill Kaiser is a principal engineer for us that's done and built some of the most amazing products for New Relic, and he is the biggest cake fan you've ever seen. And I noticed last night he never got more than 6 inches away from the stage. He was like glued to it. And the security guys just watching him like, this guy is way too into this. But no, it was fantastic, and I really, really had a great time. So this morning, we're really lucky to get started with Kara Swisher. And she is the co-executive editor of AllThingsD. And Kara started covering digital issues with the Wall Street Journal San Francisco Bureau back in 1997. And she wrote a column called Boomtown about covering the space. And I mean, everybody knows Kara. With Walt Mossberg, the two of them co-produce and co-host All Things Digital, which is a major high-tech and media conference every year. And we're very lucky to have Kara with us this morning. And she and Lew are going to do a fireside chat. And we got one problem, though. No fire. So this is the best I can do, I think. All right. If we can all get our flames going, maybe I'll just leave it here on the chair. I don't know. There we go. No, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, I'm very pleased to ask Lew Cirne and Kara Swisher to come up and talk a little bit more about the things we covered yesterday. Thanks very much. Give them a warm welcome.
Hi. They offered me drinks this morning, which I thought was interesting. I'd like to do an interview drunk. That would be really funny. Certain people.
Coding drunk is interesting.
Coding
too.
drunk, is it really?
It is.
That's how Facebook was made. I don't know if you saw the movie.
You don't write as many unit tests.
Really?
No.
Interesting. So you're going to do something geeky right now first,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Thank you for your indulgence. This is classic. You know, we're a bunch of hackers here, right? How many people like to just hack stuff in the last minute? So I don't know what hit me. Maybe it was a cake concert last night or whatever. But this morning I woke up thinking, we got all these badges and they're doing all these bumps. We should be measuring them with Rubicon. So I came down at 8:30 and asked Jason. Jason built the badges. Jason Snell, just awesome job, by the way.
The badges. Now these badges. I looked at them today, and someone's like, aren't these cool? And I'm like, these are the things we turn down at D, because I have a conference called D, because we actually want people to actually talk to each other, analog style. So explain.
But, well, no, here's the thing.
Here's
the thing. So you meet people at conferences. You know where you bump into a lot of people at conferences? In bathrooms.
Really?
But now you don't have to shake hands.
I know this
you
sounds
don't have
crazy.
to shake hands
right.
to exchange contact information or say hello. You can just do the very, safe
I'm just going to let you keep going on this.
badge hover thing.
Ladies don't do that. I know that, and I'm sure there's tons of ladies here. Wait, not really. No,
My
but
favorite
not
tweet
enough.
from yesterday
Not
was that there was as long a lineup outside the ladies' room as there was the men's room at a tech conference.
That's it. Good job. But we actually are, I know you don't know this, we're sitting down, so bumping is not a good idea.
No.
So.
No
But let's
bumping
move
or
on
grinding.
from the bathroom
So
humor.
so may I demo? I don't know if we
Yeah.
didn't even set this up for anticipate a screen sharing, but so this is Rubicon measuring exactly how many device IDs are pinging right now, unique device ID count by minute. Need a lot of refresh. So if there's any kind of event that happens in your software, we can put it together in Rubicon. And literally, I built the dashboard right there about 6 minutes ago. So just imagine what you can do if you can send us an event, we can make some sense out of it. So that's the demo.
What's that? What sense are you making here?
This is exactly how many badges have reported in the last minute. So all your badges are using NFC to communicate with your phone, and then your phone is essentially sending something to our web service, and our web service is capturing that event and saying, hey, I got a ping from a badge. You know, if we spent more than 3 minutes on this, we could also break out and show you a report that all of the badge pings happen to be coming from this room, and you know there might be a few of you still hung over in your hotel rooms upstairs or something. So that's the idea of the kinds of things we can do with Rubicon. It goes far beyond the sorts of things I was showing you yesterday.
Could you work with the NSA, get a camera, and have how many drinks people have? Anyway, so that's...
Yes.
We're not talking about that, right?
No, we are not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're busy with the European leaders being pissed off today.
They are.
What? You're hacking my phone? And
No,
then they thought only Rupert Murdoch did that.
No.
Anyway, so sorry, that was just a little ding at my soon-to-be ex-boss. So anyway, let's move on to you, because this is about New Relic and what you guys are doing. Now, yesterday you announced these Rubicon and mobile apps and things like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk. You at the beginning of this, off stage, Lew is actually one of the least egotistical people I deal with, which is nice. And he said, "I am no Elon Musk. I don't have great visions to talk about the future, and I'm just a coding kind of guy."
Yeah.
But this is a big deal, what's going on here, I think, in data and how people use it. It's thrown around a lot, the concepts of democratizing of data and the ability to use it, and very few people do use actionable data.
Right.
So I want to talk about the big topic, and then we can talk more specifically.
Yeah.
This whole democratization of data and what it means and what's the hype around it.
So right after my talk yesterday, Hillary Mason, who's the chief data scientist at just awesome talk.
She is.
When you all agree. So Hillary set the context perfectly. She said, basically, there's this small sliver of people in the universe that happen to know how to write complex code, make sense of things like Hadoop MapReduce, and know what questions to ask, and have like the credentials. So you've taken the universe of people who are capable of solving problems and narrowed it down to a small fraction of a handful of human beings that are capable of actually making the technology answer the questions.
Right.
So really what we want to be able to do is make anybody who has a general sense and instinct for the types of questions to ask and can be at the level where they could write macros in Microsoft Excel, they ought to be able to ask questions of their software to make better business decisions. And that opens up the number of people that can make better business decisions by a factor of 100.
Why hasn't that been done? I mean, one of the things my partner Walt Mossberg and I always talk about, this sort of priesthood of CTOs that we call them the Soviet ministries sometimes, that keep things away from people. Now, software did democratize people, the ability to use spreadsheets, the ability for regular people to understand it. When you're talking about the idea of people asking the right questions and not having to do, work with Hadoop or do something that only a certain amount of people can do, how do you train people to think about data that way? Because I think most people just stare at it and allow someone else to do it.
Well, we've seen this trend in technology over and over again. Like in the 70s and early 80s, there was a priesthood of specialists that knew how to use the computer.
Right.
And you'd submit your punch cards to them and they'd give you your answers next week, right? And then, there was this democratization of technology, and early on, the only people that could use computers in the 80s were geeks like me who really enjoyed seeing an A prompt and typing, DOS commands. So, but over time, the software, more powerful compute technology combined with thoughtful software design made it accessible to a large number of people. I just feel like big data technology is amazing that we've gotten this far, that it's possible to keep all this stuff and ask questions of it, but we're kind of like where we were in that mainframe mini-computer time where only a few people could do it. It's only a matter of time before it becomes democratized, and we think New Relic can play a part in that.
Let's first talk about what you're doing, your original business, and because you're talking Rubicon as your second act, so I want to sort of get to what that means. What do you talk about the sort of application management right now?
Sure.
Where it
stands. And this is something that's near and dear to my heart is software systems are very, very complex. It's front page news right now, obviously on a national level. Software systems running at scale, it's very hard for them to run well. And in fact, it's impossible for them to run well at scale without deep visibility into what's going on in real time in that software. It's the most complex part of the whole
Are you talking about the Obamacare disaster kind of thing?
Yes.
You know what
so,
they did? You know, it's interesting because I was reading up on all the things, and pretty much all the companies went like this. No, you. No, you.
I see this all the time.
Right.
Anytime there's a production issue, everybody points the finger. Not my fault, and lack of
Our
data and
part
visibility makes it possible to point fingers without solving problems.
Right. Do you want to go fix Obamacare?
I really shouldn't be saying in public, but I think we have a part to play in there.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So go ahead. So this complex system.
So these, you know, this is, you know, now my mom finally knows what my company does.
Okay. Good.
Because it's in the USA Today.
Okay.
And other great publications.
Right,
but my point is, my point is.
I like how you. I like that you.
She doesn't read AllThingsD.
Well, that's okay.
And we got to get her there.
Yeah. I think probably not. I don't think she cares about Pinterest's ridiculous new financing, although many people do. But when you're talking about that idea of, by the way, I like that you say the USA Today. It's
yes.
just funny.
I'm Canadian.
Anyway, so but the idea of people understanding this idea, but isn't that you're not going to get to a level where your mother's going to be able to query this data, or is that the goal?
No. I think we're going to iteratively get there. We're starting with helping developers become heroes to the business, because developers are capable of answering these questions, but if they drop everything else they're doing and work on it for a week, they might be able to get the answer to one question. I want to be able to get the answer in a second without a moment's thought. So we'll start with making developers heroes to the business, and then we'll sort of broaden it to like systems analysts, data analysts, and that kind of stuff.
So one of the things you said in an interview with Eric Hesseldahl on our site was that your current business is a large business. There's plenty to go around.
Right.
But you didn't want it just to be this.
Right. So in the history of technology companies, I can think of maybe 5 that have managed to break out of their first act. Microsoft went from operating systems to applications, right? It's not that they stopped winning in operating systems, at least until in the last 5-10 years. They keep winning in there, but they weren't going to settle for just being an operating system company. While they were in a position of strength, they moved on to their next act. Similarly, Oracle went from database to applications. Apple went from, did a total right-hand turn, going from computers to iPods, then to phones, then to tablets, right? But you get past those lists of companies, and there aren't that many. But I think that's...
I'm just curious, would you put Google in that?
Google's tried, but part of the challenge is if your first act is so huge, right? Like their search business is so huge that even self-driving cars may not move the needle for them.
Right.
I mean,
right.
That could, but
No, I don't think it will. I always joke that Google's like a Colombian drug dealer that's opening a chain of restaurants in Bogota.
But the point is you can never start too early on the second act, because what the typical story you see is a company grows like this, and ultimately the first act starts to flatten out. Investors start to freak out, CEO freaks out, and then they make a massive acquisition because a little acquisition won't impact the growth rate enough. And the most recent big example is HP buying Autonomy for $11 billion a couple of years ago and writing off 8 of it a year afterwards because, they knew a little acquisition wasn't going to work, so they thought, let's burn $11 million on something that won't work. So the point is, start on that innovation engine before.
So you passed on that?
No, we did.
No, I'm kidding.
It's funny. I met with a banker, and I almost never meet with investment bankers. Not that they're not, they don't serve a great value, but we're just focused building our business.
It's okay. You don't have to be nice.
I know. You've made a career on only being nice when it's merited, not for the sake of it. So the point is, I met with Frank Quattro, and I said, I can't imagine selling this company. The only thing I can imagine that would make this company be sold is like an offer that would get a CEO fired on the spot. And he said, well, I kind of did that when I sold Autonomy to HP.
Oh, nice. And that's what he's proud of. And moving on.
Yeah. So how did we get here? The point is this. You can never start the second act too early. Do it from a position of strength. And so we want to be one of those 5 companies that managed to do it so that we're not just saying...
So before we move on to the second act, where is your application management business? Where do you see that going?
I'd like it to be ultimately a billion-dollar business where there is no software project that doesn't have application management from New Relic, and that's in the mobile device, in the browser, in the app server, wherever modern software runs, we want to be there to make it work.
And who do you consider your biggest competitors in this area?
Our biggest competitors are people that they're the old enterprise competitors, right? That they struggle to maintain their revenue rate rather than grow it. And so they're at the, quote, high end of the market, servicing big banks that are happy to write very large checks and big consulting service fees to do it. And so we'll compete in the high end with those types of companies. But there's the rest of the world. And I think the Fortune 500 will be 50% new companies in 20 years, right? So many of those companies may be in the room today. And so they're not saddled with legacy, mainframes and relationships with their IBM rep and all that stuff. They want software that works, and they don't want all the hassle. And so we just want to be part of the future.
So let's talk about the second act, though, what you're doing. What you did, you were talking to Eric, and you did this. You started off in Lake Tahoe. Rubicon's named after the mountain there. But then you moved on to another beautiful vacation spot in Cabo San Lucas. Yeah. Where are you going next? Fiji?
Cabo. Going back to Cabo in December.
Okay. So nice for you. But you said you could have been looking at a cement wall, and yet you weren't. So explain sort of the process of what you were doing there.
The reason behind it is, the reason why I go to these beautiful places to write the code is as a part of a way of, I don't know, I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world, but I thought a few years ago, what would my dream job be?
Right.
Or my dream life, not my dream job. And my dream life is building the best software company I can build with the most wonderful people I can do, and loving it. And if I love what I'm doing, and I'm working with awesome people, and I get to write code in beautiful places, why would I ever want to sell this thing? Why not build a great top 10 company? And I feel like, Peter and I have worked together on a couple companies before, and I've seen him lament on...
We're going to bring Peter Fenton up in a little bit.
He lamented on how many potentially great companies sold too soon because I think the founders forgot to have fun. And do what they love to do. And in my last company, I tried to be everything to all people. And my job, I couldn't imagine doing it for the rest of my life. This I can.
So you, getting back to your vacation spot, you went there. What was the thinking of doing that, going there? Is just to think or not to be bothered?
No, it was, this is actually different from vacation, believe it or not, because I get permission from my dear wife, and I have to explain to my tearful daughter why Daddy is going to this beautiful place and she has to go to school. Doesn't seem fair. With the express purpose of, I keep a monitor and a keyboard and everything at each of these two locations, so I come in with a laptop and some high hopes. I think of it kind of like when a band goes to write an album, they go into the studio, and you're just hopeful that you come out of that studio session with something that doesn't suck, but you start just riffing and jamming and stuff like that. And all of that kind of works, and pretty soon you get a song together.
Right.
I go into the studio when I do this.
Right, so a lot of drugs, essentially.
I would say without the drugs and definitely without the extramarital affairs. So, so it's purely about, the euphoria of writing code is enough.
I wasn't going to ask that, but thank you. So you're going to create something, and you do this by yourself. You have others there, or do you work with?
I've got this kind of unfair advantage where it's like, don't call me, I'll call you. So the chat rooms at New Relic, we use HipChat a lot. Awesome product, and so I'll HipChat many developers in New Relic to get help. My skills are often rusty when I get back in there, and so I'm terrible with JavaScript and CSS and stuff like that. So I get front-end people to help me kind of make this not look ugly. So I'll bug people, but my status is always do not disturb.
Right.
So it doesn't scale. You can't have every engineer in the company work that way. But when I get that week, I kind of try to remove every roadblock.
So how long did this take you? What was the?
In a way, it's taken 15 years. In another way, it's taken 3 hardcore weeks of the ideas synthesizing into code. So ever since I started my last company, Wiley, customers, investors, teammates have said, is there any way we can take all this application monitoring stuff and make it more valuable to the business? And the gut feel was always, but we don't know how. I've been thinking on this problem for a long time. And then 2.5 years ago, when we decided to start capturing data from the browsers, I'm like, now I'm starting to see a proxy for user activity. I'm seeing every page view on the internet. there's got to be something more we can do with that. But it wasn't until what the solution would look like. That work started on December 28th of last year.
So talk about the sort of the big idea behind Rubicon, what you're doing here, because it's, actionable data is really more. I had an interview with Max Levchin, who talks about it. He's doing this. You actually gave me one of these things, one of these health things. I have a Fitbit. A lot of these are great, but I don't feel like they're actionable. And this is just in the health. You know what I mean? They don't tell you, oh, you shouldn't have eaten that Pop-Tart this morning, Kara, because now your blood sugar is way down, and perhaps an apple would have been a better choice.
Right.
But the idea of actionable data, it reminds me of that concept. You have all this data, and then talk to me what you think the biggest vision of this is.
Well, this is part of what I was butting my head against the wall with was, every time I use New Relic tried to be New Relic's own customer, and we take these business problems, we try to get answers to them, and the thing was, every question we had a little bit of a customizability to it. It was, we'd ask a simple question like, how many people are using our product? And we see this enormous number, but then we say, oh, but we actually shouldn't count the people that embed our public charts into public pages, because they're not the same people as logging in. So don't count this edge case. Otherwise, the data's not actionable in a way, right? It's misleading. And then we try another case where it's like, how many people use this feature yesterday that we just launched? And we see, oh, like 500. But then I say, oh, 100 of them are New Relic employees. Well, don't count that. I don't. So not name like at newrelic.com. And all of a sudden we get a real number, right? So the point is, we need to create a product that was a query language as opposed to this canned set of reports, because we can't begin to anticipate all the questions our customers are going to ask. But our customers are smart enough to, if they get an instant answer to their question, they'll shape it until it becomes actionable. And you can't shape it if the answer comes back in an hour or a week, but you can shape it if it comes back to you in a second. Right.
So this is another thing you talked about is addictive metrics.
Yeah.
People can get too addicted to metrics, as with rock stars in studios with other things.
Yes.
There is
and their Twitter feed.
And their Twitter feed. Well, that's me.
Yeah.
But when you think about that, this idea of addictive metrics can be useful and non-useful. So talk about where that's going, because you could ask almost anything and know something and not, because you're aiming this at business people, not developers, that people can actually do something with the knowledge.
Right, right. I find myself very addicted to asking questions in Rubicon. It's the kind of thing where once you get a hang of it, you want to learn more. Because really the questions we're asking are, what are your customers doing with your software? And you have to understand, Kara, like when you write an article, aren't you just really curious how many people read it?
Yes.
And did they like it?
No, I don't care.
This is your work, right?
I still don't care.
I care very much about whether people like the software.
I have children and 2 dogs.
Yeah.
I'm all set with feeling good about myself.
No, I mean, we all want what the work we do to matter to people.
I understand what you mean.
And our software, APM and Rubicon, they were both about helping developers connect with their work because they're seeing their work actually being used by their customers.
Right.
And that's what's addictive about it.
Well, talk about the business case, though, because you're aiming at business people, too, because they have millions of questions about what's working, what's not. And a lot of people do things instinctually and say, oh, this is what I think people are doing, this is what I think. And then when you get the actual data, it turns out to be often much different. A good example in data is Nate Silver, who turned out to be right about everything because he was using data, and the old political pros just despise him because they had instincts.
Right.
And so, I mean, to me, the rise of someone like that shows that data is not always not the answer, but when used properly, it is.
It is. And to your point on business people, a thought comes to my mind, because I remember early on, I said it's 15 years thinking on this problem, and we use the term, how do you make this more useful for business people? Well, who are business people versus technology people? Is that like a finance person? Is that a marketing person? Is that a salesperson? Is that a developer who cares about the business? I think the lines are pretty blurry. I'd say a lot of developers think about more than just their code. They think about how they can help the business. And I think a lot of business people care about how the product works. And so we want developers to be heroes to the business, and we want finance people to be able to get rapid answers questions. I mean, I used this in a use case last week. Our sales VP came and said, I want to know exactly how much this customer is using these features in our product, and we could answer that. So, you got to kind of segment it out by role and be a little less generic than business people. But I also think it's only fair to think that, like, people who build software are not, incapable of thinking in business terms. In fact, the best developers have business instincts.
So before we get Peter up here, we're trying to bring him up in a second. The clock's not working, by the way, but I have this old thing called a watch that I'm enjoying a lot.
How quaint.
Thank you. Yeah, it has numbers, although it's so funny, my kids don't have any idea what this is. Although I was walking along Market Street and we ran into a payphone, and my kids were like, "What's that?" And I was like, "It's a payphone."
It's where Superman gets
right,
changed.
Exactly. Well, no, impossible. And then I said, "Well, you sat next to it and talked on the phone with it," and my youngest son, who's 8, said, "That's filthy." So anyway, and I said, "You are correct, sir."
Not
Before
nearly
Peter
as filthy as my offsite.
Where does that go for your business then? Now you've just gotten $80 million in funding, is that correct?
Yeah, that closed early in the year.
I know. Not as much as Pinterest, but pretty good. And probably you actually have an actual business model.
No. Come on, you know better than this, Kara. The size of the round makes for great headlines,
I agree.
but has little to do with the quality of the company.
Okay, I agree. No, I think $80 million is ridiculous too.
It's too much, you're right. I'm not sending it back, but listen to me. Our first round was $3 million of funding. How many Series A $3 million rounds do you have these days? We had a $25 million seed round from a company that hasn't shipped yet.
I think you should get much more. I think these VCs should throw much more money down your rat hole than others.
No. We want to keep our
but
shares.
where are you headed? You're headed to an IPO. You've talked about
that's
it a little
certainly, if we want to be a top 10 enterprise software company, I can't imagine being private and doing that. So that's definitely the future of New Relic. But the real future of New Relic is having a global impact, right? So. When that happens is less important than when we democratize big data, when we reach every software project on the planet, those kinds of things.
And last question before Peter comes up, what does that mean to be an enterprise company in 10 years? What would
hopefully different from what an enterprise company meant 10 years ago.
So what would you do a little Elon Musk here? What do you think? Don't talk about going to space.
It's funny because it's almost like enterprise is a dirty word in some circles, and in other circles it's like what you use to say your stuff is solid and secure. We want to serve businesses of all sizes, and credit to Microsoft, and Scott Guthrie did a great job yesterday. I love that he demoed New Relic right in Azure. Microsoft got enormous by being one of a very small number of companies that reached businesses of every size, 2-person coffee shops or legal firms, all the way up to the largest companies in the world, all use Microsoft software. And most, quote, business companies struggle to get past, get below a company with more than, say, $1 billion in sales. But that's only a small fraction of all the technology, opportunity. And certainly it's a small fraction of all the interesting things going on in business. So when I use the term enterprise company, I don't want to be thought of as just serving the high end.
Right.
Although we certainly want to dominate there as well.
I think you're completely right about Microsoft. They do tend to get a hard time, whether they do reach everyone.
Well, but, the only way you can do it with a product that's so easy that literally anyone can get going with Excel without a sales engineer coming in and setting it up for you. Right. Most business software, you need a freaking, painful class just to learn how to log into the stuff, and that's got to change.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right about the Microsoft thing, except you know why? It's because the executives are so unpleasant as people. I think that's why they get a hard time. So come on up. Oh, come on. Stop. I've spent a lot of time with Steve Ballmer.
Satya Nadella is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
Satya's fantastic.
He's
You're
awesome.
right. He's a lovely guy.
And here's my buddy, Peter Fenton.
And he might be the CEO. Probably not.
All right.
Hey, Peter.
Thank you.
So, Peter was frightened. I'm only going to ask about Twitter. But you can say anything you want right now if you like. No.
I could. We're not in the quiet period.
No, we're talking about Lew. Congratulations on that, when it happens. Do you have any comments about investment bankers? No. Okay. Okay, let's talk about why.
That's why I don't have my voice this week. The pricing committee. Yeah.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Too cheap.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this investment and why you were attracted to it, and what you know, it sounds odd, but you have a lot of very more commercial or consumer or popular investments, many of them, like Snapchat and Twitter and others. This one, I've never seen you more excited about something than this one, which I think is interesting. Either you're a real closet enterprise geek, or I'm not sure what's going on, but talk to about it, because you get very passionate about this topic.
I get passionate about it in a way that I think there's, you know, you see Lew and you just say, okay, there's a great human being that's getting better every year. And one of the things that Lew, you know, before he started the company, we'd worked on a prior investment, Wiley, and at the end of the road there, it had become so sales-driven that the passion was gone. And I think Lew, I saw him as a craftsman, an artisan who loved to build. And you know, we were both terrible golfers, and we were golfing. And I think, you know, about halfway through the round, we decided to get drunk.
The theme of this conference.
The theme of this conference. And
Drunken coding.
Lew said, I just want to start a business where I can do what I'm passionate about. And I said, hey, you know, Lew, the problem is that if you build a small company or a big company, you work kind of the same amount. So it's just, you have less impact. And so the challenge for Lew, and I think actually for a lot of people in this room, is to design a business that lets you stay madly in love with it. And the thing that makes Lew so happy, and I think what brings joy to most of the people here, is developing great products. And so the idea that you could have a CEO that still writes code was unfathomable a decade ago. And one of the first things you say when you're a venture capitalist is like, put up the keyboard, stop it, you got to hire people, you can't get involved in the details like that. So the opportunity, and this is really at the heart of New Relic, is the quote stack has changed, where a developer can now be a developer operator. We talk about DevOps, but developers can also now, with things like Rubicon, do things like sales and marketing. So DevOps becomes dev sales, dev marketing, when the underlying technologies allow a direct connection between an author of the product and the consumer. This goes back to open source, where the authors of great products were saying, why are we stuffing it through these middlemen? It's no different than your business, where you say, we've got the middleman of the Wall Street Journal, but you're creating the value. You're the author.
Yeah.
And software developers are the authors of the future products, which is, you know, this company's mission is to say, empower them, let them go direct to the customer, give them the tools to do that. And, you know, how many companies can boast having 300,000 plus developers that are being able to do that? And so it's
right now we're going to kill that sales guy who just came up right there.
Yeah.
See, he's texting someone. Pay attention, because you're about to get fired.
the constructive middleman.
Yeah, the constructive middleman. Okay, all right. But talk about that idea of the flattening organization, because it is interesting, because it sort of goes throughout a lot of things. And when you're making these investments in enterprise, especially, how does that, you know, ultimately there are roles for everybody, and there are constructive roles for everyone. But talk about that concept when you're making investments, and then when you're running.
There's a great so we have this dilemma when we invest. You see entrepreneurs as being, and people in this room, extraordinary in some dimensions, but catastrophically weak in others. And the common vernacular in the venture business is, well, we need to round them out. We need to make them a well-rounded, so stop the stuff you're really good at and get good at the stuff you're bad at. And I think that's a recipe for disaster. And we've learned through people like Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs that where there are great peaks, there are great valleys. And an individual like Lew, who builds these amazing products, needs compliments. And so when you're building a company, I think what you ask is, okay, well, what am I not good at? And how do I do more of what I'm great at and not try and learn what I'm hopelessly bad at, if you are bad at it? And I think that model for company building allows for, by the way, technologies have to enable it, then products like this where you don't have to go be a data center expert to build a software product. You start to construct a team that complements itself, where it's like a great band. If everyone's the same, it cancels itself out. So
talk about the investing in enterprise right now. How do you look at this space? Because there's been some really interesting investments going on. I think it's one of the areas we're trying to do more of, because it is, people sort of get...
Yeah, stop writing about Pinterest. Do this cool
Oh, come on. That was a giant, friggin' ridiculous amount of money. I'm sorry I got that scoop. I apologize. But in my
what's their business model?
I'm sorry?
And what's their business model?
Well, we could go on about Snapchat if you want right now.
Touche.
But you know what?
Click.
You know, people said that about Twitter.
Yeah.
People said that about Twitter.
Yes, that's true. The giant money-making engine that is Twitter. Wait, just a second. So don't go down.
I'm just going to let you two chat. It's going to be fun.
He keeps forgetting I made Mark Zuckerberg sweat to almost fainting. So, That was Walt, I'm sorry. So moving away from it, but when you're doing the enterprise space, I do think enterprise is one of these areas. One of my goals is to have the most interesting enterprise conference, because so much of what's going on there in the changing workplace is, I think, where a lot of things are happening. I mean, obviously the consumer space has been explosive over the past decade, but the workplace has lagged behind that. So what do you think about making investments in enterprise? What are the things you're looking for?
It starts, so I look at what I do when I invest in a consumer internet or enterprise. It's the same emotional response to the founder entrepreneur. And I think we're in an era where product authenticity, a deep understanding of what is it in the end-to-end narrative of product experience is no different for a consumer than a business. And so the New Relic logic is no different than the Twitter logic or the Yelp logic around, hey, the minute someone comes to the site, they should experience joy within a matter of seconds. And then the product should become a habit. And the thing is that historically the products were sold top-down, CIOs, enterprise briefing centers, and you didn't have product entrepreneurs. If they were product entrepreneurs, they became showmen. And that is the industry today. If you look at the conferences that are done, they're big fanfare, but from people who haven't built products in years. Whereas this new generation, I think you look at it at companies like Dropbox or New Relic or Zendesk, where I serve on the board, they're indistinguishable. And the advice we give as partners in building a company to a Yelp is no different than New Relic. Whereas at Wiley, it was, you got to get your IBM Salesforce in place, and go sit down with Gartner, construct the Magic Quadrant. I mean, this stuff is horseshit. But so clearly we're not. So I think we have a framework that says there is a democratization where.
By the way, you left out the Las Vegas strippers part, but go ahead.
Yeah, and the state clubs and the golf, which is why we're no good at golf.
Right, golf.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly. So as you transform towards a value system that puts transparency and quality of product first, you see that with Apple, you see that with the consumer products, that makes the enterprise interesting because the people live in these products. They're spending hours a day in an interface that historically was a gray, miserable existence. And so, I don't know, I think it's as empowering as anything we do in the consumer side and just as exciting.
So we're going to get to questions because Lew really wanted to answer questions, which I think is, they have the audience. So please, I think is there a thing that people will get up just in a minute? Just two more things. The concept of what you're doing is in this democratization of data, but what is, if you had to go out and, it's called FutureStack. Yeah. What would be a visionary here? What do you think, you can do it, I know you can do it.
I'll try.
What would be sort of the perfect world if you could construct it? What's the third act, I guess, when you're thinking about it? Where would that be?
Oh boy. So I think I think I ought to be creating a new act for the company every 4 or 5 years. I started, the first one was really 6 years ago. We started building 1.0, and Peter made an offer I couldn't refuse to fund the Series A. And so what the third act will be, I think that's hard to speculate on, but I think the key thing is New Relic is, it's always going to be something around, we just want to now enable people to make better decisions for their business based on what's going on in their software, because we believe that software is changing the world, and therefore the app is the center of the business. And my hope is that, I'll tell you that week when I was in Tahoe, it was embarrassing. You're so glad you weren't there, but I was literally dancing around the house out of joy from the software I was creating.
Wow.
It was not pretty.
Was there a Snapchat of that?
No.
No. Okay.
Thank you very much. I wasn't doing the Tom Cruise tidy whities thing, but it was still.
Okay. Good.
And everybody's thinking.
Yeah, they are.
Did not
you
want
just did
visual.
that. Yeah. Nice move.
But there is something incredibly joyful about creating software. And if we can play a part in helping our developers have more of those moments and that turns into amazing products, then I'll feel very good about what
I want you to go just a step
done.
further on that, though, on something, like I just was with a Google person, and I asked what would be, something that they would go crazy out, and I was expecting Jetpack.
Yeah.
But with immortality.
Immortality.
For Larry.
Well, that's Larry Ellison.
For Larry.
But I think Larry Ellison should live forever, in many ways. So I was asking them what they thought was a crazy thing, and without a second they went time machine, which freaked me out. But they're building in the bottom of Google X. They're up to that, and going back in time, and anyway. So. By the way, you should also go see Hot Tub Time Machine. It got bad reviews, but it's hysterical. they go back and create Lugal, which is really funny. The guy. Anyway, think of something like where would be the perfect enterprise product in what you're doing in this democratization of data?
Well, I think I would love some successor to Rubicon be the Microsoft Excel of big data.
Good answer. I like Time Machine better. But let's Time Machine.
I'm a geek.
No, I'm teasing you. So questions from the audience. There's mics, is that right? Please ask questions. I know you guys have them, or girls and women have them. Hands up.
Hi. I wanted to ask a question about if you were giving a keynote at your alma mater, what would you tell or say to the wannabe software developers of the next generation?
And where's your alma mater? Both of you can answer that question. Where's your alma mater?
Dartmouth, Stanford.
Okay. Party guy?
Geek.
Geek. No. Let me correct that. Irritating geek. Go ahead.
You could have said entitled, which is a new word. That came in the last decade.
All right, you go first.
Something that probably wouldn't go over well at Dartmouth. I had a 3.2 GPA in computer science, but I got a 4.0 on projects where I could just run away and write code instead of look at the theory of Lisp and NP-complete problem solving. So just get behind the keyboard and build stuff. Don't sit in the theory books. That's what I would say. Build software.
That's very Peter Thielian.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. I'm more pragmatic. I'm less of a theorist. I like solving real problems.
Do you think school matters?
I do. I think I had a wonderful experience at Dartmouth, and I think you grow in ways in school that you can't really tell until it's long behind you. But often I wish I could customize when I study different things. I think I'm finally ready for history. I'm 43 years old, but history when I was a sophomore I wasn't ready for.
The hormones prevented that.
Yeah. It's okay because it repeats itself.
Yeah.
My advice is, and this is the same thing we look for when we're backing entrepreneurs, is to find out what motivates you. And I think everyone's different. For Lew, it's building products, and for some people, it's closing deals. And my line of business, we're stagehands. We're the least important people in the ecosystem because we're there behind the scenes trying to make sure everything's clean and building a company. But I love that. So I think when you're trying to pursue someone else's dream, it eventually reveals you as being unmotivated and not very good at it because you're not willing to kill yourself to do it. So the question I always ask people when we're interviewing someone is, what's the hardest you've worked in your life? Think about a block of time, a week, a month, where you completely went insane pursuing something. And then ask the question why and what motivated you, and chase that. And if you do that for the rest of your life, you'll do great things.
Great.
That's excellent.
Question? Come on, there's got to be questions. This is your opportunity.
Hey, so you guys talk about how you guys were leading towards more of the sales side before New Relic, and New Relic has always been a very product-centric company, right? Have you ever felt at times in New Relic where you were sliding back into old behaviors or not being product-centric, and what did you guys do to fix that?
So we are a business, and we absolutely want to grow the business, and it was funny. I remember the board meeting. Peter came in, and we'd been in the market for like 3 months, and Peter said, so who talks to customers at New Relic? And I looked around the table and said, that's a good question. Does anybody ever talk to customers? So we tried a zero sales approach, and it had zero abysmal results. So fact of the matter is, a conversation with a New Relic rep to get you from interested to a customer is an incredibly effective way to generate business for us. But I feel like the important thing for us as a company is to focus on, it's up to the product to get the customer to the point where they understand the value, and it's up for our sales force to get them comfortable with the company and the financial parts of the relationship. And that differs from traditional enterprise sales where you've got 3 meetings of PowerPoints before you see any software. And so that's really expensive to do for a company, and that's why enterprise software is so expensive, is because you've got to fund all these really smart people to come on site and do PowerPoints before anybody tries any of the stuff you've built. But I have deep respect for our sales and marketing functions. I feel like our marketing team is the best in enterprise software. I feel like our sales team is a remarkably exceptional group of people. They care about their customers, and they're incredibly, productive, and they have fun doing it. But there's also camaraderie where they celebrate each other's victories. And so, one thing I have to mention is none of this would be possible if I didn't have a partnership with Chris Cook in the back, who you kind of were joking about. I could not live a day without my partnership with Chris Cook, and he really does so much in leading this company. I shouldn't be here alone in the spotlight. Chris is really the engine that makes New Relic run, so I can build products. So thank you, Chris.
So I think you're saying is sort of if you build it, they will come. Although I can't believe you said that in a meeting. Customers,
if you build it, they will come so far, and then we need great sales and marketing to get them over the line, and that's an important part of the business.
How did you take that answer? Customers? What customers?
Well, it's a little. I figured somebody would have to sweat the customer's request at some point, but you did get a few thousand paying. They weren't paying very much, but people paying, and maybe they weren't happy. This question, by the way, haunts every product-driven company, because you start to hire sales people, and they have the logic of their past company, which is usually those past companies, product was in support of sales, and I think if you want to stay true to your value system, sales has to be in support of the product.
Yes.
So if you flip it and say, okay, well, if sales has friction and problems, et cetera, then the product has to get better, but you don't put the value system in place where you start to compromise what you're building based on transactions. And I think the great example of that is Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines had a very fanatical discipline about the product and not deviating, not having hub and spoke, staying point to point, staying with 737s, resisting the temptations to do things like go international. And if you are fanatically disciplined about that in the creation of your company, you say no a lot. And I think that this company has been great at that and staying true. Hopefully you guys experience the product that has put the product first ahead of sales.
I think that's a very good point. Apple had a great video you should see about saying no to things.
Yeah.
Which is...
it's hard.
Yeah, it is, very much so. Another question? It's a room full of people without a question. There's one.
So first off, I've enjoyed using New Relic a lot, and FutureStack has been fantastic so far. Obviously, this has been a really good team that you've built here at New Relic. So you have this idea, and you have to go out and sell that idea to your engineers, to your other employees. How do you go about building that team? How do you go about building that kick-ass team, especially when you have to be focused on getting the product moving forward?
I almost want Peter to answer this. You've seen this story so many times from so many companies. You go first on this one.
I'll give you the simple answer is that when you start a company, particularly people in this room, you're building a product. And you don't know if anyone wants it or not, so you don't need to go hire a team. Who knows if people want it? So there's this, it's like lighting a little flame, and if you think about it too much, you'll blow it out. So after that first phase where you start to see that there's magic, people like what you have, and typically the companies we back have 3 to 5 people, the product then becomes the company. And you want to focus on building the system that builds the system. So you start to think as though your organization was itself the product. And Lew went through that very deliberately and said, we're not going to go hire a bunch of people and say, let's go scale. But it's like being very thoughtful around what do I need to continue to love what I'm doing. So he laid out how he wanted to spend his canonical week. And there were great people required for him to have the freedom to do that. So, it becomes a major part, I don't know, half of your time, but the idea that if you get it right, then it can become less of your time, but it always is a major, it's the single biggest, probably keeps you up at night more than anything else at the company, but team building is the essence of what separates a great company from somebody that has their opportunity squandered.
I'd say the other thing about it is you must come from a position of trust and openness. And just reach out to people. Let me give you an example. The first hire I made was Mark Sackleben, who ran finance for my last company. And I trusted Mark's judgment more than my own in virtually all things, especially related to finance. So I said, Mark, I'd like you to join the company, and here are the first two things I'd like you to do. I'd like you to write yourself an offer and write me an offer. Figure out how much we should pay each other, because you've got better judgment than me on that. But the point is, at my exec staff table, I've got 6 people that meet on a Monday morning, and depending on the moment in time, the topic of discussion, that person is effectively the CEO of the company. Right. For that, when we focus on the IPO question, it's Mark who's the CEO of the company. He's the leader of that discussion. We all play a part in the discussion, but he's running the show, and that goes for every other person who's a domain expert on my executive team. And those people want to come to work and be part of it. They're not just like people that are doing lose orders. And so you build a culture that way, and you get people's hearts into it.
Wait, you don't know the answer to everything?
Well, I do, but that wouldn't be fun to share with everyone.
Okay. All right, one last question. If there's one last, right over here. Right here. Where's the
back
mic? Oh, back there. There were 2 quick ones, and then we've got about 4 minutes, 5 minutes.
Hi. My question is, what's stopping you guys, for instance, from starting a strategy practice based on your software? So you mentioned the limitations of Gartner, where they kind of wave their hands and they aggregate data, and then everybody pays $25,000 a year to back into their own business, where you're much closer to the metal, and if the product is the thing, maybe people don't know what questions to ask with your system. Maybe you could present them a set of answers that they didn't even know they needed.
That's an interesting question. You're going to start a strategery
I think I've got my third act figured out. Thank you for the idea. Seriously, though, we've been asked many times questions that kind of remind me of your question, where so you've got 70,000 customers, that's double a year ago, and they're all sending you data from their software, and you're doing nothing really to find common themes, or doing something that's anonymized, obviously, but aggregated across them to spot trends or identify. So I think that we haven't yet found the magic idea that makes takes advantage of the fact that all this data is coming into one multi-tenant cloud-hosted architecture. But if there's a way we can help our customers while obviously holding their privacy sacrosanct, then that's a great opportunity.
So strategery, you going to do it? That's what I call it. Strategery.
I don't like the word strategic. I think it gets thrown around a ton, especially by management consultants. Yeah. There's just like, what are you going to do and how are you going to do it?
Okay. All right. Last question was right here. Let's do this right down here. She's coming. Yeah, she's coming.
Here it comes.
To your. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, Mario with Ride Charge. So how do you facilitate generalists? Because you talk about, kind of, is it kind of under the purview of the corporation at this point? It's kind of a follow-up to the first question. You have your CS degree, now we have to teach you how to ask good questions, or is it kind of, we need to revisit the education structure and say, we need, CS theorists to learn how to ask good questions earlier on? Like, where does that kind of lie? Thank you.
Well, I'm going to set up Peter's answer, because I don't think anyone is really a generalist. You might be a generalist in your education, but you have strengths that can't be measured in a report card. It could be, are you comfortable organizing people and setting goals and operating, right? You kind of put categories of CEOs into 3 kind of categories, right? What are they again?
Well, there's different types of leaders. I mean, we're all oblong. The idea of the old saying that, like, show me a well-rounded person, I'll show you a mediocre person. So you have to figure out where you want to be angular and crazy in some ways. And so part of these products, when Rubicon was first demoed at the board meeting, we said, well, where's the generalist view, the top-down, simplified? And Lou's like, it's not who we are. I want to put a query interface in front of people. I'm like, well, will they know what questions to ask? And he says, of course not. But they'll start to ask questions, and then they'll discover things, and then they'll go down the rat hole and look back up, and God knows, sometimes it'll be useful, sometimes it won't. So we hope that patterns emerge. But it's less about being general at anything, but actually being extraordinary at one or 2 things. And I think that's the hallmark of a great company. It's the hallmark of a great developer. And maybe a product like this helps people get lost that way.
So what are the 3 types of CEOs?
Well, there's visionaries. This is a profile we do with a lot of our CEOs. It's sort of it's not a Myers-Briggs thing. It's more existential. So right. You have people who are great at execution, Jack Welch. You have people who are great at vision, Steve Jobs, and then people who are great at relationships, which is, I put Mark Benioff in he probably wants to be a visionary, but or John Chambers in that category. And what we find when we profile our CEOs, if that's not the right word, but that they're usually extraordinary at one of those three things, and the mistake is to try and be something you're not. So if you're a great execution-oriented CEO, don't try and be the visionary. You can partner for that. And so much of what I think is success in life is self-awareness. And getting in touch with what you are, so you don't end up being in a position where you have to be something that you're not. So fight the tendency to being a generalist is a good theme, and for CEOs and for and for developers.
It's interesting. You left out number 4, the jackass, but I've met plenty of those. They often are visionary or something else. So last question, I'm going to do it. One of the things I always ask everyone I talk to, I think it's a really important thing. What do you think is the best decision you made, and what's the mistake that if you could go back in Google's time machine and fix?
I guess the best decision I made was to pursue a career in software development and to take that leap of faith that, like you say, when you start building a product, it's like when we started this conference. It's like a 1.0. You have no idea whether it's going to work until you're so far past the point of no return, right? So you got to make a very fearful leap when you do that, and I'm glad I did that twice. Peter said. Peter told me, as he said, you could try to build a little lifestyle business. Originally, New Relic was going to be like, maybe we could support 5 people on a $5 million a year subscription and sip Mai Tais and watch subscriptions come in. And Peter said, well, A, you're not going to be sipping Mai Tais. You're going to be working like 100 hours a week to do that. And B, you're not going to have as much fun as creating a great company. So I'm glad I said yes to working with this guy again, definitely.
And the mistake?
Mistake? Trying to be all things to all people in my last company. I'm a pleaser. I'm one of those Canadians that if there's one person in this room that's not having a great time, I'm going to take it very personally. I'm kind of that way. So letting that rule too many of my decision makings, you can't lead a company with that.
So being Canadian was your biggest
Being too Canadian.
I love the Canadians. They're so nice. It's like incredible. They're like 2 miles away from us, and we're a bunch of jackasses, and they're so nice. I'm fascinated by the geographical difference. Anyway.
Well, if you're a venture capitalist, you have a list of things that are regrets, things, biggest mistakes, and that's sort of the nature of the beast. And so I'd be up here for 5 hours, confessing them all. The short form of this is actually a heuristic that I've learned too late in my life, which is when I've talked myself into something, when I've really had to think about it and convince myself of it, I've regretted it, almost universally. And when I've followed my instinct and not thought about it much in my heart, I've never regretted it. And so when I invested in Lew, we thought New Relic was a monitor for Ruby on Rails, which is a tiny market with questionable business models attached to the companies. We never thought about it. I just instinctively felt this is a person that will do something great. I'd be lucky to be part of it. And when I thought about YouTube never being a great company because the legal pressures they'd face, and I had a whole long essay as to why it would never scale into a company, and boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, follow your heart.
Excellent. Thank you so much for these guys.
Thank you,
Thanks.
You're awesome. You're awesome.
Thank you.